So glad you reached out to me because we're going to be talking about anime of the decade where there's so much ground to cover, and I don't know if we can do it in a short 10-minute video, but we're going to try our best.
We probably should mention that with all the animes out there, we are going to have some blind spots, and these are at least our objective list.
We are actually going to start off with our honorable mentions list and Attack on Titans. If you may recall, back in 2013, America had a super fixation with zombies. Zombies, everything just ruled the world. Peak Walking Dead, when Walking Dead was still relevant. We had zombies in video games. And then when you see Attack on Titans has a very zombie-esque post-apocalyptic feel to it, it came in at the right place and right time.
Oh, for sure. When this came out, it came out with a bang because up until this point, anime was kind of sort of on the decline. A lot of people at the time were not watching Toonami as much, and things like Toonami weren't around anymore. And at this point, it was only just now starting to get to streaming animes off of sites like Crunchyroll. So when Attack on Titan came, it came in big. And on top of that, it's one of those shows that most people who tend to dislike animes can even get into this kind of show because it often doesn't just follow the typical like anime tropes for it.
This was also an anime that introduced that concept of, hey, don't stay too attached with X character because they might die. Let's go ahead and now talk about one of the shows you wanted to talk about.
One of my honorable mentions is 2011's Tiger and Bunny, which for those of you who never saw it, in a way this is kind of like a first attempt at something like My Hero Academia because it's another TV show about like a superhero world. The thing I just loved about it was that it just had this kind of like buddy cop dynamic of these two superheroes of like the old seasoned superhero having to team up with a younger one because he's the older guy is just like not considered as hip with the kids anymore, and so it's like, oh hey, the company you work for, we gotta team you up with this guy because you're kind of leading behind in the polls right now. It was a pretty entertaining show for a original anime because there wasn't a manga adaptation of this until like much later on. For an original anime, this one did a pretty solid job and it still holds up pretty well.
But let's talk about something that I know a lot of people will also talk about is One Punch Man. I'm not too crazy about One Punch Man as a whole, but One Punch Man is important to include in my list, an anime that knocks every popular anime, especially shonen anime tropes out there with its over-the-top acting, even when you see the villains kind of give their speech about why they're the biggest and baddest creatures out there for them to be stopped by this guy who doesn't even resemble a hero, but he wants to be one so bad. I'll say this much too. Who's stronger, Goku versus Superman? When One Punch Man came out, there's been lots of popular videos talking about, well, who's stronger, Saitama or Goku?
This was another show that really came in at a good time, since this is ostensibly like one part of parody of like all the superhero and shonen type series, and also at points also a good deconstruction of some of them, like just even the philosophical thought of Saitama being like, yeah, I'm super overpowered, I'm bored, I feel nothing, and just how like that kind of does affect him to a degree, but it's still worthy of checking out. Alright, so my second honorable mention is going to be the series Panty Stocking with Garterbelt, 2010 series that was by the former studio Gynax, which fortunately, if you kept up, most of them were dissolved and they're now working as Studio Trigger for the most part. This was one of those shows that just has a bunch of style and comedy with it. It is very manic and it is a lot of style, but it's still one of those shows that's really fun to watch as a whole. Maybe there's some jokes that don't hold up too well 10 years later, but that's going to be up for other people to decide. But I still really enjoy it for everything it was able to accomplish in that short amount of time, and the lamenting that they will never be a season 2 since the studio was dissolved.
Now let's actually go ahead and talk about our best ofs list. So for me, I have to immediately talk about Hunter x Hunter. Let me tell you, in all the shonens I've seen, and I have seen pretty much all of them, this is the one one by far with the best power scaling. And then it can be a power that can be strong based or weak enabled based on the psychological condition that the user puts themselves during the battle. This is also one of those rare animes where I will say the English dub is better than the Japanese dub.
Oh, wow.
There's a moment where it subverts a lot of expectations in the Chimera Ant arc, which is later on in the series. And I don't know who coined the term, but there's a reverse Super Saiyan moment in this show where you think the protagonist levels up to do something good and it throws that whole perspective out the window. And when you see it happen, it really is one of the most top things I've seen in anime of this decade.
I've been meaning to check this series out because I've always heard nothing but good things about it.
People, I was late to the party with Hunter x Hunter. I saw it this year. I'm actually rewatching it again.
Jumping off of that, though, first item I want to talk about on my best of is a series called Nichijou. And I feel like this one might be very unheard of for a lot of people because this one came out in 2011. For those who don't know, this is basically a comedy slice of life series, but this is just an utter delight to watch, and it is filled with like so many gut-busting, laugh-out-loud moments for it. Everything from it, like the title is supposed to be as My Ordinary Life, and all it is a series of random segments of all these students and teachers and whatnot just having the most absurd moments occur to them and their reactions to it. And oftentimes, the comedy is just how over the top their reactions are to just certain moments. And let me tell you, there's going to be surprising moments when you watch it, but it is an utter delight to joy. And if you hadn't checked it out, you can just jump in on any episode and it's still going to be a really solid quality throughout.
Let's go ahead and talk about another anime which you know I am advocating, and that show is Vinland Saga. Set in the Viking Age, starts off as a simple revenge story, and you think that's kind of where it goes. Quickly find out that it is this huge scope and narrative, like Game of Thrones, where it's just much bigger and larger than life. And it's based off of these historical figures. You have someone like Thorfinn, King Sven, Thorkill the Tall, and this is some of the best character development I've seen in any anime period, where they don't romanticize any of the violence. There's no black or white in this story. There's a lot of gray, and you kind of accept it for what it is. Vinland Saga is, without a doubt, the best original anime I've seen in 2019.
Unfortunately, haven't watched the anime. I have read at least 2 volumes of the manga, and I plan to get back to it. This is on a lot of people's top list of this year. Demon Slayer, like I almost slept on this until like I just saw the outpour of so many people saying, watch Demon Slayer. And I checked it out and I'm like, they're not wrong. This lives up to the hype. Because the thing I do really love about this show is how it's still like shonen in a lot of aspects, but it also feels a lot more grounded in certain terms. Not only just how compassionate Tanjiro is, he's trying to protect his sister after she had become this demon, and how he does have sympathy for some of the demons he fights, but also just his perseverance, like how they do, of course, the training montages, but it took me a while to realize, oh crap, this guy has been training for 2 years, as opposed to most animes where it's like, yeah, you just trained for a month and now you're ready to go fight some demons. But all of the characters are super endearing and have so many layers to them. Like, even if at first I'm like, I'm not particularly jiving with this cowardly Zoichi dude, and then hearing his backstory, I'm like, you know what, I really hope he succeeds in life. This show really took a lot of people by surprise, because I didn't hear about it until at least probably in the middle of the arc, when people were suddenly being like, hey, check this stuff out, guys, it's good. And I gotta say, they were right the entire time.
I think that wraps things up for the first video, so I hope people enjoy what we had to say. There's a part 2 coming out, but I hope you guys enjoyed this. My name is DJ Miles.
And I'm Infinity Joe.
And as we always say, to be continued, take care.